We're just a couple days into spring training, and the injuries are already starting to pile up. Yes, welcome on in to First Pitch, your source of news, notes, and updates on Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. He's Troy Brock, Troy B Baseball on the Twitter machine. You can find every episode of the podcast, firstpitchpodcast.com. And Troy, we're going to move to the National League West for our divisional previews. So I want to get to that in just a minute. But first, just a ton of injury updates across the league. Some of these are new. Some of these are lingering impacts. The first one is one that we didn't really discuss a lot when it happened last week. Kind of want to get some more information, but Bobby Miller of the Los Angeles Dodgers in the Cactus League opener against the Cubs is a pretty scary situation. He takes a comebacker to the face. Here's a quick clip of what happened. So, I mean, it's flush in the forehead. You can see it already starting to get red and swell up. Dave Roberts said that he avoided a fracture. He, quote, certainly escaped a more serious injury. He is in concussion protocol. That's the terrifying part of baseball, right?
Yep.
Like, that's just you have to wonder with, like, even with wood bats and not metal bats and all of that, balls keep getting hit harder and harder and harder, and something like this is terrifying.
Yeah, it's scary, man, and it's something to think about for for somebody like me who has a young kid in baseball. And I know your son plays baseball also, and it's scary to put our kids out there and see stuff like this on a major league field. I mean, at our kids' level, this won't happen because they're at T-ball and lower levels. But
they have to wear helmets on the mound with face masks. Like, that's a thing in the lower levels. Like in T-ball locally for us, my son has to be on the mound with a helmet that has a face mask to play pitcher. Yeah.
Wow. I do like that. Our league doesn't do that. I kind of wish they did, but because there have been a couple of comebackers from some of the kids that may or may not have been held back a league by their parents so they can do a little bit better in the sport. But no, it's definitely scary, and I know that I could never be a pitcher, even if I wanted to, just because of the sheer fear of being hit like that.
Yeah, I remember I can't think of his name, but there was that pitcher for the Rays that used to wear the padded hat, and so it was huge, but it had the padding in there so that if a line drive was coming, you could hopefully kind of duck down a little bit and get a little bit of protection from catching that flush. Although situation like that, I mean, that was the forehead. I don't know if the hat would have helped there. I kind of feel like it went under the hat on that one. So, I mean, there's not really much you can do. I've seen in like slow pitch softball and things like that, like high arc softball, they'll pitch behind an L screen. Like there's an L screen set up, and if the ball hits the screen, I want to say maybe it's like an automatic single. I don't think it's an out. I don't know if it's an out or an automatic single or something, but like they have that L screen set up specifically to protect the pitcher. I don't think baseball is ever going to get to that point, but you do have to wonder if somebody could make some sort of like Kevlar padded, hat that wasn't massive or something. I know softball, I've seen the girls wearing helmets with face masks, like in college and things like that. You have to just kind of wonder about that. But while we're there's some other injuries facing the Dodgers. They went out and signed 1 million guys in free agency, all the best relievers and stuff like Kirby Yates and Tanner Scott. Turns out they need them. Evan Phillips, who was their primary closer for a good part of the year last year, has a right shoulder injury. Michael Kopech, who they acquired via trade from the White Sox, has right forearm inflammation. Both of those guys are a little behind schedule and could potentially start the season on the injured list, according to manager Dave Roberts. There's some other stuff there. Freddie Freeman tested his ankle for the first time since he had that surgery. He says he'll be ready to go for the season opener in Japan on March 18th, but he won't play much in spring. And then Shohei Ohtani is had his first bullpen session a week and a half ago. It was all fastballs, but he is back on the mound, and they're expecting him to return as a pitcher sometime in May. He's just not going to be able to go do a rehab assignment because they want to keep his bat in the lineup at the major league level. So it'd be kind of interesting to see how he's used when he comes back. Does he go straight into a starting role, or does he work maybe in relief or as an opener and then slowly stretch out over the course of the year? Just kind of, how do you think we haven't really seen a guy like Ohtani who is so valuable on the offensive side have to deal with a rehab and try to come back on the pitching side. Like, how do you handle this? Is it maybe the best thing to just throw him on a rehab assignment for a week, let him start twice in the minors and then bring him back? Or do you think you can get enough work in with bullpens and with side sessions and simulated games where they should be okay?
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to be enough, really, because you're even in the bullpens and side sessions and even in simulated games, you're still not going at that full actual game speed like you would if you went on an actual rehab assignment. And I think that their offense could withstand not having Shohei Ohtani in the lineup for a week if they send him on a rehab assignment to make 2 starts in AAA. And I think that would probably be the best course of action with them planning on him pitching. I think the best course of action overall would have him just focus on hitting like he did in 2024. But if with them wanting him to pitch, I think their best course of action would be to send him on that rehab assignment and get him some reps in at actual game speed instead of just bullpens and whatnot.
Yeah, I get it. I understand it. The flip side to me is he doesn't count as one of your pitchers, right? He has that two-way designation. So he's in your position player count. So he is an extra arm. And you don't have to go short if you bring him back and he only can go 2 or 3 innings at first. So, sorry. I think that's kind of the flip side there is you can let him build, provided he's not awful, which we don't think he will be. You can let him build up in the majors because you're not hurting your pitching depth to do it. I think that's kind of the flip side. But either way, curious to see how this goes. I know he came back from Tommy John with the Angels. It's a little bit different now with the Dodgers because obviously he's hit that fully realized generational form as a hitter now too, 50-50 and all that. Moving from the Dodgers to their World Series opponent, we've already kind of discussed the issues with Giancarlo Stanton having those elbow issues, right? Don't know how much he'll play in spring. Aaron Judge isn't going to play his first Grapefruit League game until March 1st. Catcher Austin Wells is also kind of being held out a little bit. Aaron Boone said there's supposedly not an injury concern here. They just want to hold him out a little bit because of how deep they went in the postseason. The extra workload that really both of those guys had. Judge played a career high 158 games in the regular season, 14 more in the postseason. Judge said for his part, he's fine with that, provided he gets, in that last week, he's playing every day and gets 3 or 4 at-bats a game. He'll be ready for the regular season. As a fan, obviously, you'd hate to get there and not be able to see Aaron Judge, but is this kind of, you think, maybe the beginning of seeing more of that where spring training for a lot of position players is almost too long? And so the best of the best are probably going to back off a little bit on their workloads early so that they don't burn themselves out before they get to the postseason or to the regular season?
Yeah, I could certainly see that because I think spring training is too long. There's a lot of baseball games that just really don't matter other than just getting guys up to game speed, and most of the games you're not seeing the everyday players for long periods of time. So it's too long. It's fun for the fans, I guess, to go down to spring training sites and see a big name guy take 1 at a game and then turn it over to a guy that's going to be in AAA all season. But I don't know. I think that a lot more players will be following in the footsteps of Aaron Judge. I mean, we saw it in the NFL over the past decade. They lessen their training camp and preseason games from 4 weeks to 4 games to 3 games. And even the Los Angeles Rams, I don't think they have any of their starters playing any of those at all. Yeah. And so it's I think that's going to start coming over to baseball eventually.
The load management era may be here, just like the NBA's done and NFL's done. Talking about from a World Series competitor to a former World Series champion, the Texas Rangers. Evan Carter, the outfielder who missed almost all of last year with a back issue, he is expected, he is back. He led off over the weekend in a Grapefruit League game, but now his running mate, Wyatt Langford, is being held out with a, quote, mild oblique strain. The plan is to keep him out of baseball activities for about 5 to 7 days and then see how he's doing. Because the Rangers still have an extra outfielder on the bench, something where they have Leody Taveras still on the roster. He's been a starter for them in the past, and they can sit Langford down and let Taveras and Carter play every day. Is this a huge deal, provided it doesn't linger to the regular season, or is this something where you caught it early, as long as it doesn't carry over, there's no concerns on the regular season?
Yeah, this is part of what we talked about on Friday, of everything having to go right for the Rangers. And as long as it doesn't carry over, this shouldn't be an issue. But if it does carry over, then it's going to be the start of maybe something big going down in Arlington, because we talked about it Friday. Everything has got to go right for them to win the division this year, especially on the injury front, and
it's not already starting to not go perfectly. Yeah,
right. So it's not looking good early, but we'll have to keep an eye on it and see if things turn around as the actual season gets here.
Absolutely. We saw a new injury for the Mets over the weekend. Nick Madrigal went down with a non-contact injury. I believe you actually wrote a little bit about that for Sports Illustrated, but until we know the severity of it, what do we know about the Nick Madrigal injury as of now?
Yeah, it's just pause.
I'm not pausing. You're on the spot. Answer this. I didn't realize you didn't write that article. That's on me. My bad.
No. You're good. You're good. No, he's got a dislocated shoulder, which kind of sucks, especially for an infielder. It's
on a non-contact thing too.
Right. And, we kind of did see this with Trevor Story. It was either last year or the year before that. It started with what was believed to be a dislocated shoulder. And then it just got progressively worse and worse to where he missed most of the season. I think that was 23, not 24. And it's not good. And Nick Madrigal has a pretty lengthy history of injuries, and he probably was going to be a good backup infielder for the Mets, but might be a while before they could see him do anything in a major league game.
Yeah, and the interesting part of this to me for the Mets was the goal was, if Madrigal could be your MLB backup, you could get Brett Beatty, Luis Angel Acuna, Ronnie Mauricio all everyday playing time in the minors. And if Madrigal has to miss the start of the season, go on the IL and all of that, reminder, any sort of IL placements are dated from opening day, right? If you go on 60-day IL now, not that this is a 60-day IL injury, but if you go on 60-day IL now, day one of that is opening day. It's not today. So if he has to go on the IL, it means Beatty, Acuna, Mauricio, one of them is probably at the major league level as your bench piece and not getting everyday reps in the minors unless you bring back Jose Iglesias. So that'll be kind of interesting. He's obviously said he wants to come back to the Mets. The Mets have expressed an interest in having a little more flexibility than Iglesias gives them, simply because he's out of options and, a veteran not going to go down to the minors, things like that. So interesting. We'll see what happens with this. Other Mets news, though, we already talked about Montes. Brandon Nimmo is just about 90% on his sprinting, coming back from that plantar fasciitis last year. He's hoping he doesn't miss more than about a week of Grapefruit League stuff. Again, I think that's one of those, as long as he's back by the regular season, it doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. Brandon Nimmo is a big piece of the Mets lineup, and he has been for the better part of the last decade. And even how my feelings for the Mets are, I've always been a big fan of Brandon Nimmo and his game. And so, but yeah, I agree. I think as long as he's back by the regular season, it'll be all right on that front.
Yeah. The Cubs are surprisingly banged up. We knew Nico Horner, that flexor tendon surgery on his forearm in October, meant he probably wouldn't be ready for opening day. He's hitting in the cage, kind of light work in the cage. He's just started throwing, not ready for opening day. So that's a second base opening there. Matt Shaw, one of their top prospects, was expected to win the job at third base. He has been sidelined with left oblique soreness. He's hitting in the cage. He's doing some fielding and throwing work. He's not playing in games yet. Dansby Swanson had a core muscle injury and had surgery back in October. He is still taking things easy in workouts. I don't believe he's played in a spring training game yet either, but they think he'll be ready for opening day. And then Javier Assad has an oblique strain, and he has just started a throwing program after that. Are we all maybe kind of underrating the infield injuries, or I guess are we kind of ignoring the infield injuries of the Cubs when we predict them to finally unseat the Brewers and win the division?
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. But I think that if all of those guys can come back by May, that they can go on a run late in the season, especially with their legs being a lot fresher than most other guys for not starting at the same time. But it sucks with Nico Horner because he had a lot of injury issues early in his career, and then the last 2 seasons he's put up 150 games in each for the first time in his career, and now he's having to deal with this. And so hopefully, for the Cubs' sake and for Nico Horner's sake, he can get back on the field and stay on the field whenever he does come back. But yeah, I think it's going to be a slow start in Chicago with the injuries, but they'll turn things around as those guys start coming back and make a run in the middle to late end of the season, take the division like we thought.
There you go. A couple other just kind of interesting acquisitions that are down. Trevor Rogers with the Orioles, right knee subluxation. He's going to miss the start of the season. Alex Cobb, free agent signing with the Tigers in December. Inflammation in his right hip. He got a platelet-rich plasma injection in the hip, but he's going to be down for a month. Probably won't be ready for opening day as well. Spencer Horwitz, acquired by the Pirates in a trade with the Blue Jays to be the first baseman 6 to 8 weeks after right wrist surgery. Pirates aren't a competitor. Obviously, the Tigers and Orioles are. Bigger deal, losing Alex Cobb, losing Trevor Rogers.
Ooh, that's tough. Both of them really need the help on the pitching front. But I'd probably say Alex Cobb, just because the Detroit Tigers rotation is really, there's not much to speak of there. And we've talked about it at length multiple times, and it's Tariq Skubal and the boys. And Alex Cobb was supposed to be a veteran
presence. Skubal, Jack Flaherty and the boys. They got Flaherty back. I forgot about Flaherty.
That's right. I'm sorry.
Skubal, Flaherty and the boys. There you go.
My apologies, Jack Flaherty. But yeah, it's not good because Alex Cobb did add a little more length to their rotation, and he is a pretty decent innings eater, and missing out on him is going to have them doing a lot of that pitch and chaos again early in the season.
There you go. All right, so kind of moving on from some of the injuries, previewing the divisions, we're on the National League West. If we're picking last place, it's kind of obvious that's the Colorado Rockies. I don't think
I had the Dodgers.
I was not expecting that. 61-101 last year, so 37 games back. And I'm sorry, is that the projection for this year, or is that last year? Either way, not great last year. Looking at, they have not made a lot of moves. No. They bring in Thairo Estrada from the Giants as a free agent to play second base. That's after they non-tendered Brendan Rodgers going into his final year of team control. Was going to make $4 or $5 million in arbitration. They did not keep him. They brought in Kyle Farmer to be on their bench from Minnesota as a backup. And then they brought in reliever Scott Alexander from the A's on a free agent deal. And then a lot of like minor league stuff. Catcher Austin Nola, minor league deal. Infielder Keston Hura, minor league deal. Infielder Owen Miller, purchased him from the Brewers after he was DFA'd. A Rule 5 pick from Cincinnati and shortstop Jose Torres. Brought in some outfielder Nick Martini from the Reds on a minor league deal. Thoughts on this lineup? Like, is there anything to really like here outside of Ezekiel Tovar and Brenton Doyle's defense?
No, not really. It's not great, especially with what Chris Bryant has been dealing with really ever since leaving the Cubs. I did look it up. The 61-101 was the Rockies' record last year. They were one of 3 teams in Major League Baseball to finish with 100 losses or more. The other being the Miami Marlins and of course the Chicago White Sox. But no, the lineup's not great outside of Brenton Doyle and Ezekiel Tovar. I mean, it sucks to see Chris Bryant just have the drastic drop off that he's had in his career since moving from the Cubs to Colorado, and it's not good. Or the Giants to Colorado. I'm sorry, I forgot he spent some time with the Giants. Wow,
he was traded there. Yeah, that deal. Yeah,
I just completely blocked out the 2021, I guess. But it's not a great lineup, and it's going to be another long season in Colorado.
Yeah, I think that like this. It's a lot of like things have to go right? Ryan McMahon has to kind of rebound to what he can be. Nolan Jones, I kind of have as a sleeper, right? Jordan Beck's got to acclimate to the majors. I do think this outfield defense, Nolan Jones, Jordan Beck, and Brenton Doyle, which probably have the best combination of outfield arms of any team in baseball. Like this is going to be fun as hell to watch these dudes rack up outfield assists all year. The problem is they're going to be chasing a lot of balls because this pitching staff is just going to like, it's so hard to build a rotation in Colorado. Part of it's the elevation. Part of it's, just organizational philosophies. I kind of feel like they still scout guys by ERA, which is, everybody's moved on and they're still kind of stuck in some development hell here. But I don't know. I don't even really know. Like, is it worth diving into this entire pitching staff, or it's just, Herman Marquez is your best pitcher, and if that's your best pitcher, there's almost no way to be competitive on a full season basis, right? Like Austin Gomber led your team in they had 2 guys qualify for the ERA title, Ryan Feltner and Austin Gomber, which is amazing. But both of them had ERAs of like 4.5 or worse. So, I mean, do we spend 30 seconds on this rotation, just say they're bad, or do we need to go into these guys and explain why they're bad?
I think we just say they're bad because, I mean, anybody that knows baseball knows that this rotation is bad, and it's not just the Coors effect.
It always has been.
Yeah, and it's not just the Coors effect with these guys. These guys probably wouldn't be good on teams that aren't in Colorado because they're just not made for Major League Baseball.
I will say, I do think that this bullpen has some fun stuff, right? Seth Halverson, Luis Peralta, 2 of their prospects. Victor Vodnik, they got him via trade from Atlanta. He's a flamethrower. He picked up like 9 saves last year. I do think Justin Lawrence is a fun piece to kind of think about. I do think there is some fun and some interesting stuff in this pen. But for the most part, this is just a bad team, and it's been a bad team for a long time. And to your point, I don't just think it's a home or road thing. At home, the ERA for this pitching staff as a whole last year, 5.46. On the road, this pitching staff's ERA, 5.51. It was worse away from Coors than at Coors, which is just wild to me. I mean, they did better. They struck out more guys on the road. They walked significantly more despite less innings, but the strikeout rate was higher on the road. But they were just bad everywhere. They were bad in the first half. They were bad in the second half. ERA was over 5 on both of those. I just don't really see a path to improvement here. You have some interesting prospects, right? Carson Palmquist, Connor Van Syok, Chase Dollinger, Gabriel Hughes, Son Sullivan. You have some interesting arms, but do we trust that any of them are going to make it to the majors and be good? We haven't seen anybody else do that with Colorado. And it just feels like it sucks too, because Colorado, the fans are great. They go to these games. They attend. This team, I feel like they spend money sometimes. The Chris Bryant deal is an example of that. But when they spend money, it's weird. It's a weirdly timed deal. and it's way larger than you think it should be, and it never works out.
Yeah. It's just a buddy. My wife and a buddy of ours went to New Orleans yesterday for a basketball game, and we were actually talking about the Colorado Rockies among other baseball topics on the way back from New Orleans last night. And my buddy kind of put it perfectly that the Colorado Rockies are one of the worst run organizations in all of sports, not just baseball. And it's
Rockies and Angels are baseball's
Rockies and Angels. That's exactly what I told him. I said, I've got the Angels up there, but you're not far off. But yeah, it's not a good run organization. But hey, the good news is that in 2025 they do have MVP candidate Nolan Arenado on their payroll.
I forgot they're still paying for Nolan Arenado. If he gets traded, that money that they're giving St. Louis will transfer over to the new team. It's so wild to me, the idea of paying a portion of that deal every single year. The Miami Marlins are still paying for Giancarlo Stanton.
God, I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, the concept of trading a guy but paying some of the deal every single year blows my mind. To your point, looking at Colorado right now, they are paying $5 million in each of the next 2 years for Nolan Arenado, when he will have been on St. Louis's roster for multiple seasons.
Yeah.
Nolan Arenado is the 7th most expensive player on their roster.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just that was one of the worst trades in the history of all of sports. It doesn't make any sense, man. I don't know why they choose to operate the way that they do, and it obviously hasn't worked for them. But do you know what the definition of insanity is, Lindsay?
Yeah. Let me see here. It was Elhuris Montero. I'm pretty sure he has now been. Yeah, he just signed in Japan, so he's gone. It was Austin Gomber, Mateo Gil, Tony Losi, and Jake Sommers. Only Gomber and Montero even made the majors. Gil's been in the Met system the last 2 years. Didn't make it past high A with Colorado. Tony Losi got traded the start of 2023 to Tampa Bay after hitting the wall double A. He was released in August of 23 and hasn't been in affiliated ball since. Jake Sommers retired last year in June, reached triple A, but had a 10.37 ERA.
Good God.
Yeah, it's only Gomber and Montero that even made the majors, and Gomber's the only one that's provided positive WAR. So you got 3.9 WAR in return for trading Nolan Arenado, 3-time All-Star, Gold Glove, Silver Slugger, second MVP voted in 2022. Wild. Just absolutely bonkers how bad that trade went. I feel like a lot of those trades for a superstar, not all of them, but a lot of them don't age well. The Mookie Betts deal did not age well for the Red Sox. The Juan Soto deal's been okay so far for the Padres, I feel like. Michael King looked good and stuff like that. But a lot of these deals just don't age that well. And we'll see what happens kind of going forward. Do we think this team, final thing before we get out of here, do we think this team breaks 100 losses this year?
Yeah, I think they have more than 100 losses this year. It's not going to surprise me at all if they have more losses this year than they did last year, because they've done really nothing to improve, and it's just a lot of stagnation while the rest of the league is getting better around them.
Nice. Yeah, I'm kind of the same place. Like, this division's even tougher than it was, right? I think Arizona is one of the more underrated teams in the National League. Dodgers, obviously, Padres still have a bunch of studs. Giants added pieces, right? Willie Adames, Jorge Soler, no, not Soler. I'm sorry, they traded him. But they have a lot of interesting pieces, and so yeah, I absolutely feel like this is definitely a situation where they could lose more than 100 games. Sorry for all the weird starts and stops this one, guys. We'll be back tomorrow doing more spring training updates as well as injury updates and divisional previews. In the meantime, you're listening on audio, do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we drop that next episode. And until next time, this has been First Pitch.